Welcome to what we Americans like to call our nation's capital. I'm here for one day, and I'm going to try and pack in as many visits to unrecognized diplomatic missions as I possibly can. So behind me here is the Embassy of Tribal Nations, which is the Washington, D.C. office of the National Congress of American Indians. That's an organization that was set up during World War II and represents Native American or American Indian tribal groups from across the country. And this is their D.C. office, which they opened in 2009. Now, they call it an embassy. It's not technically an embassy, but it functions like an embassy in lots of ways. And that's because the, hundreds, maybe 1,000 tribal groups, tribal governments in America are considered sovereign, and they deal directly with the federal government on a sovereign-to-sovereign basis. This is an important part of the dialogue between the federal government and the vast number of tribal governments all across America. One of the most famous independence movements anywhere in the world is, of course, Tibet. And behind me there is the office of Tibet, the diplomatic mission of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Washington, D.C. And I've been told I can have a few minutes with His Holiness's representative, Dr. Namgyal Chodop, just now.
Hi, Fredo. My name is Namgyal Chodop, and I'm the representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration to North America. His Holiness was only 24 years old, and he had this huge responsibility of making sure that his people and the Tibetan nation survived this darkest period in its history. And he initiated 3 projects. One was the resettling of Tibetan refugees into compact communities and establishment of Tibetan schools. And the 3rd project he initiated was reviving Tibetan cultural and monastic institution. And that's basically the foundation of how the Tibetan people, despite 65 years of being in exile, have been able to maintain that resilience and keep the movement alive. So his visionary leadership has been key in that. And right from the beginning, His Holiness was for reform and democratization of the Tibetan society. And he said, we have to adopt democracy. And he's the one been pushing Tibetans towards adopting democracy. And he said that's the only way we can adapt to the, changing international system and keep our movement alive. Right now, what the Tibetans inside Tibet are going through, it's very difficult. Tibet is basically now an open-air prison, and it's locked off from the rest of the world. Freedom House, for the past 3 years, listed Tibet as one of the least free country. And in their latest report on the freedom score, Tibet scores 0. That's how Beijing controls Tibet. And what does that show? Despite 65 years of their rule, they haven't been able to win the loyalty of the Tibetan people. And we are very optimistic that things will change for the better. Things has to change, and this can't go like that forever. Today we see that Tibetan people have been resisting for the past 65 years, but it's been essentially a movement based on non-violence that's been guided by the visionary leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We want to have a dialogue in good faith to come to a solution that could be mutually beneficial to both the Chinese and the Tibetan people. And we haven't given up on that. We are very much committed to that part of non-violence and dialogue. And today, as we see all this violent conflict around the world, we see, our movement has much to offer to the rest of the world to bring about a change, a positive change that could be long-lasting, systemic change. And that's what's driving the Tibetan people inside Tibet. And that's what this office is also trying to do, trying to make sure that we follow that visionary, path His Holiness has set up for us. And if we could do that, nonviolence might take a long time. We may not achieve our goal in our lifetime, but this is something that's the best way of achieving real positive change in this world.
It's an honor to meet you and to come into your office. Thank you very much for your time.
Are we done?
For the past few weeks, I've been trying to get a hold of the Council of Khalistan. That's an organization that campaigns for the independence of Khalistan, a homeland for the Sikh people of India. I've sent several emails to several different email addresses and not heard back from them. One reason I think they might be hard to get a hold of is because the Indian government is persecuting them, well, killing them. Just in the last few days, the Washington Post has reported that the Modi government attempted the assassination of a leader of another Sikh movement, Sikhs for Justice. His name is Gurpatwant Panun. He survived, thankfully, but that happened on U.S. soil in 2023, which is really quite shocking. This building behind me is the address listed on the Council of Khalistan's website. I have a feeling they're not there. It's probably just a mail drop or a place where they, that they can list on their website. And I don't blame them because, to be honest, they have to be very careful. They have to fear for their lives from the Indian government. And let's go see if the Council of Khalistan is in that building. Okay, they were not there, just as I suspected. Council of Khalistan, if you're seeing this, sorry I missed you. Please get in touch. Just around the corner from the White House is the East Turkestan government in exile, which campaigns for an independent state for the Uyghur people. And Foreign Minister Salih Hudayar has invited me to come into his office and have a chat with him.
My name is Salih Hudayar. I'm the current Minister for Foreign Affairs and Security of the East Turkestan government in exile. So East Turkestan is 1,828,418 square kilometers. It's roughly 1/5 of the current territories under the control of the People's Republic of China, or the Chinese Empire as we call it. The Second East Turkestan Republic was overthrown on December 22nd, 1949. In 2004, the East Turkestan National Congress split into two over the issue of independence versus autonomy. Those who were connected to the Second East Turkestan Republic, and these are, former military officers who at that time were in their 80s, 90s, and they had been leading the independence movement. They said, no, we can't give up our independence. Some of them were able to, our leadership at that time were able to persuade the folks here in the United States to allow us to, set up our government in exile. Fun fact, our government in exile was declared, inside the U.S. Capitol. We're the leading entity advocating for the independence of East Turkestan and its external self-determination on the international stage. We need to get recognition of, at the very minimum, the status of East Turkestan as an occupied country, to legalize in the international community our national movement. Previously, the United States, in 1959, it listed us as a captive nation, along with Tibet, under the captive nations law. We're hoping for more than that. We're hoping that they will, treat us at least on minimum on par with Tibet. The U.S. Congress recognizes Tibet as an occupied country. China, is an empire. That's the reality. Many people think that colonialism has ended, and that, after the British Empire ended, there's no more colonialism. But China is the biggest example of modern, 21st century colonialism, And East Turkestan is the biggest example. Everything that China is doing in East Turkestan is to expand its colonial project. Their ultimate aim, like any other colonial power, their ultimate aim is to eradicate the native populations and resettle it with their own people. And that's the root issue that we are facing, is Chinese colonization and occupation. That's the root of all of our problems. And the only way that we can ensure our human rights, our freedoms, whether it's our cultural freedoms, our religious freedoms, to the very existence of our people, is by having, restoring our own independent state once more. While others might be more optimistic, I look at things realistically. We have a very limited window of opportunity to sustain our existence. We have maybe 10, 15 years maximum. So if something does not happen in the next 10, 15 years, we will be completely wiped out. China wants to invade Taiwan. What they're doing in East Turkestan right now is part of that military preparation. Their biggest nightmare is that the Western world, led by the United States, will support East Turkestan and, cause their empire to collapse. And I believe that if the international community, those Western countries like the United States and others, even India, Japan, if they put their heads and their resources together, coupled by not just us out here in the diaspora, but the millions of people in those concentration camps, in those prisons, if they are given an opportunity, they are more than willing to fight and die for their independence rather than dying in those concentration camps and prisons and being enslaved.
There's several other unofficial embassies in Washington, D.C. I'm not visiting in this video. Some, like Northern Cyprus, Kurdistan, and Quebec, have offices in London I visited in other videos. Others, like Greenland, Wales, and the National Council of Resistance of Iran, did not agree to speak to me. I very much wanted to meet with Ambassador Bashir Gott of Somaliland's mission to the United States, but he's away today. He did send me a text saying he'd seen my videos about Somaliland and that I'd done a good job, which was nice. So far, I've mostly been visiting diplomatic offices, but embassies also play a consular role where they issue passports and ID cards and that sort of thing. Well, we're going to visit one of those. It's located just around the corner from here in that building there over my shoulder. It's the World Service Authority. And this is an organization which issues world passports and world ID cards to anyone that wants them.
My name is David Gallup. I'm a human rights lawyer. I've been at World Service Authority for 32 years now. And as president and general counsel of the organization, I'm working to help people on a day-to-day basis, refugees, stateless persons, through our legal advocacy department. We're also known for issuing documents of global identification and travel, like the World Passport, the World Birth Certificate, the World Political Asylum Card, which have been really oftentimes made the difference between imprisonment and freedom for many people around the world. So the passport has multiple legal as well as actual or factual basis of recognition. The UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights do affirm the right to freedom of travel as well as the right to identification. Both of those are the main basis for the World Passport. Not only that, but 96%, actually a little bit more than 96% of all countries in the world have actually placed visa, entry, or exit stamps in World Passport holders' passports since 1954. The reason why the World Service Authority was founded which was founded in January of 1954, was really out of necessity. And for Gary Davis, who was a stateless world citizen who had claimed world citizenship back in 1948, he kept getting detained, arrested, simply for having no documents. And he said, well, I need a government that represents me as a world citizen. It didn't exist before that. World War II basically started. His brother was killed on a battleship in Salerno, and Gary became extremely angry. So he's like, I'm going to go bomb Hitler's war factories because what they did to my brother. So he became it was called Air Corps before it was Air Force, bomber pilot. But once he was up 19,000 feet in the air, dropping bombs on Brandenburg and other places in Germany, he's like, why has my government forced me to kill people? And why was my brother killed? How is this not illegal? Isn't it murder? And he said, I can't be involved in a system that forced me to kill my fellow human. I need to get out of that system. And it was back in 1948, after having been back from the war for a few years, that he said, okay. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to go to Europe, hand in my U.S. passport, and give up my U.S. citizenship. I don't want to be a national citizen anymore if it forces me to be violent against my fellow humans who I love. So that was really the story that led to him being outside of the system and needing something like the World Passport to even help him. And of course, he wasn't the only one after World War II. There were thousands and thousands of refugees then, and now there's millions. There's like 100 million refugees internally and externally displaced. There's like 20 million people who are stateless in the world, and that's ridiculous. How are we treating our fellow humans like they're nothing, or they're just a number, or why aren't we helping each other? Why are we hurting each other? It didn't make sense to Gary. It doesn't make sense to me. The World Passport is both a symbol and a practical tool for us to, one, as a practical tool to exercise our rights to travel or to identification, even if it's not travel but day-to-day affairs, but also as a symbol to look to a future that humanity can have where we're not fighting each other, where we're working together collaboratively, where we celebrate our differences and enjoy our differences rather than fighting over them.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fred. It was so nice to meet you today, and I really appreciate all your wonderful questions.
That is the Library of Congress. That is the U.S. Supreme Court. Between them, behind those trees, is the U.S. Capitol building. But this, my friends, is the Embassy of Florida. I kid you not. So technically this is not an embassy, and no, it's not some sort of secessionist fever dream. This is a building that was opened in the 70s by proud Floridians who just wanted to have representation of their state here in Washington. Normally you can go in and get a glass of orange juice for free, but I've arrived just too late. They stopped about half an hour ago and I missed it. The idea that Florida is the one state that has an embassy in DC seems appropriate, but at the same time, while it's kind of easy to knock Florida, I don't think it's a bad idea. Well done, Florida, I gotta say. So I've left the District of Columbia behind. I'm in a state, the state of Maryland to be precise. Just over the border, I haven't gone very far. I'm in the town of West Hyattsville, which I've never been to before, but I gotta say, it looks really interesting. There are some people I'm going to be meeting for the first time, very excited to meet in a few minutes. Here we go. Actually, let me give you some background first. In 2017, leaders of the Southern Cameroons, a former British colony, declared independence from Cameroon as the Republic of Ambazonia. A bloody civil war ensued, and Ambazonia's independence movement fractured into dozens of organizations, with 4 different people currently claiming to be president. Very recently, many of these groups united to form the Southern Cameroons People's Secretariat. 2 of its leaders have invited me to dinner, but we decided to first have a conversation outside. Be aware, the terms Southern Cameroons and Ambazonia are both used interchangeably.
So I'm here together with my comrade Ernest. We're pretty much Southern Cameroonians. And we're here not on behalf of any of the groups per se, but on behalf of the new Secretariat body, which is a collaboration of many, many different groups, many different community services, many different aspects of Southern Cameroonians who are trying to come together to work towards the freedom of Southern Cameroons.
My name is Ernest, as originally said, and we are here for the Secretariat, Southern Cameroon Secretariat. And this Secretariat is an embodiment of every Southern Cameroonians. Those that are even yet to born, they belong there. We are just saying that all of us, we have to be one, because we are calling Ambazonia. You don't have Ambazonians.
Some people believe in the fact that there's a peaceful way to do this, and so they belong in certain groups. Others believe that there's a non-peaceful way to do this, and so they belong to other groups. Others believe it's a political way to do this. Others believe non-political, financial. And so based on people's beliefs, you had now the creation of the various different groups, right, which are all pointing towards one thing for the most part, which is the independence of Southern Cameroons. But somewhere along the way, some of the groups began to falter, and that's the honest truth about it. People began to think about having a united front for the most part. It didn't actually materialize until we had the conference that was in Canada, and it was during that conference that we truly sat together as various members of various groups and said, you know what, we really need to take this to another level. We need to actually have something or have a platform that we can all communicate and we can all discuss and all talk and all put our strengths and offset our weaknesses. Now, I'm not saying that all the groups are members of the Secretariat as we speak, but the Secretariat's door is open. It's an ongoing process. Yeah. No group has said no yet.
Really, any Ambazonia that believes in freedom has to let something go. And you know very well that change is the most difficult thing that you can have. We have been for more than 8 years doing this, which means we now know where we are failing and what is going wrong and where is it happening. So it's now time for us to really say, all of us, we didn't do it good from the beginning, and we can attribute it to the fact that we were not ready for any war or anything. And then with the experience that we have gotten in the past, we can now put them together and try to see how we can move forward. That's what I can say here.
Part of the reason why the struggle or the war has, not been as successful as it ought to have been is because of the idea of using titles and using especially that particular word, president. By calling anybody a president within the Secretariat, is it going to do us more good or more harm? We realized that it was going to be more harm, and so we tried to avoid that. You do have leadership, right? For example, the Leadership Council. You do have the Secretariat, for example, the person that actually heads or chairs the Secretariat. So you have words like that and verbiage like that, which are put in there intentionally because we've learned from mistakes of the past. Anybody who has a particular skill set, knowing that that particular skill set will be able to take Southern Cameroons back to its independence, the door is open.
That would include the military groups then, I guess.
The military, you have different groups. You have military groups, you have political groups, you have apolitical groups, you have, again, there's no group that is going to be shut out from that because that is supposed to be the whole idea. It's the Cameroon military that's killing over on the Southern Cameroon side. You're not hearing of any Southern Cameroonians killing in Yaoundé or in Douala. So it's a war, but the war is being fought only on one particular side. No Southern Cameroonian has crossed over to the French side of Cameroon and burnt a house or burned down a village. 500 plus villages or 400 plus villages have been burnt down in Southern Cameroon by the Cameroon military.
I think we're going to go eat. I'm pretty hungry. What's it called again?
Kitchen near you.
Kitchen near you. Okay, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ernest. Hi, so it's the next morning. I'm here at Union Station. I'm about to get on a train to my next destination. I only had a day in Washington, but I can't believe that I saw so many amazing and important people and got a chance to speak to so many of them on the same day. Huge thrill. I'm really looking forward to putting this video together because there's some really important stories here and I hope you enjoyed coming along with me. There are links to all the different groups and organizations mentioned in the video in the description, so check them out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.